Wyoming Territory, June 1877. The morning sun caught on the edge of the riverbank like fire on glass when Zeke Granger spotted her barefoot, still as stone, sitting at the water's edge with her hands folded in her lap. Her dress was too fine for the wild country, pale blue and dusty at the hems. She did not turn when his boots crushed the dry grass behind her, did not flinch when his horse snorted. Zeke pulled his hat off and stepped closer, slow. "Miss? You all right?" Her head tilted and her voice, clear and calm, floated back to him. "I heard you coming long before your horse did." That stopped him. He glanced around. No wagon, no saddlebag, no one else. Just a blind woman sitting alone by the river like she belonged to it. "You got a name?" he asked. "Yes." She turned her face toward the sun. "It's June Sutton." He squatted down near her, not close enough to scare her, but close enough to see her eyes clouded gray, with a trace of blue that might have once been bright. "You out here alone?" She hesitated. Her fingers curled into her skirt. "Not by choice." Zeke's jaw tightened. He looked up and down the river, then back at her. "What happened?" "My uncle brought me west," she said softly. "Said there'd be work for a blind girl in the settlements. He left me here 2 nights ago. Said he'd come back. He didn't." Zeke let out a breath and sat down in the grass beside her. His chest ached in that old, familiar place that never quite healed right. "You hungry?" "Yes." He pulled a small sack from his saddle and handed it to her. She took it with careful fingers and found the bread inside without asking. She ate like she had not had a bite in a day, which made his stomach twist. "I was heading north," he said, "but I can take you to the nearest town if you want." She chewed slowly, then asked, "Why were you heading north?" Zeke looked at the river. He never told people things unless he had to, but something about the way she sat there quiet, steady made it hard to lie. "Looking for a stretch of land," he said. "Somewhere to stop." "You tired of running?" His head snapped toward her. "What makes you think I'm running?" "I cannot see," she said gently, "but I listen. You ride like a man with nowhere to be and no one waiting. And your voice sounds like you have not talked to anyone in weeks." Zeke stared at her, heart thudding. She could not see him, but it felt like she looked straight through. "I got no one," he admitted quietly. "Not anymore." June nodded. "Then maybe we're not so different." Silence settled between them, broken only by the river and a hawk circling high above. Zeke thought about the long, lonesome miles behind him, the men he buried, the little house in Texas that burned down with his future in it. "You got a plan?" he asked. She gave a small shrug. "I plan to get through the day. That is as far as I got." Zeke stood and held out a hand. "Then let's make a new plan. First step's getting you out of the sun." She reached up, her fingers finding his with quiet confidence. He helped her up and led her to his horse. She did not ask questions, just moved with the calm of someone who had learned long ago that panic never helped anything. He lifted her into the saddle, careful not to jostle her. She clung to the horn, her chin high, not asking for help. "You ever ridden before?" he asked. "Not alone." "Well," he said, swinging up behind her, "you are not alone now." They rode for hours across the open plain, the wind tugging at his shirt and her hair. Every so often she asked where they were, and he described the land to her, the wide grass, the low hills, the way the light turned everything gold before dusk. When they stopped for the night, he helped her down and built a fire. She sat across from him, her hands folded in her lap again. "You do not have to stay," she said quietly. "You could leave me at the next town." He stared at the flames. "I could." She tilted her head again, listening. "But you will not." Zeke looked up. Her face was calm, sure. She already knew his answer. "No," he said. "I will not." After supper, she turned her face toward the sky. "What does it look like?" "The sky?" "Yes." He hesitated, then said, "Deep blue. Like cold water. Stars starting to shine through." His voice softened. "You would like it." She smiled. "I already do." He watched her, the way she breathed in the night air like it was something holy. He felt something shift inside him, something old and locked away. She did not ask about his past, did not probe, but she listened. That night, He laid out a blanket for her near the fire and kept watch with his rifle across his knees. He did not sleep, not because of danger, but because for the first time in years he was not alone, and it felt like something worth guarding. In the morning, she woke with a soft yawn and turned her face toward the rising sun. "You stayed up all night?" she asked. "I did." "Why?" He stood, brushed dirt from his coat. "Because you were here." She smiled, not big, but real, and something in his chest cracked open. They rode toward the town of Larkspur Flats, a small place tucked against the hills. On the way, he gathered she had no family left but that uncle, no money, no trade. Just her hands, her ears, and her heart. Zeke had a small satchel of coins, enough to get them a room and meals for a while. He used it without hesitation. He got her a room at the boarding house and a warm bath. She did not ask questions, just thanked him and took his arm when he offered it. Over the next few days, he found himself stopping by more often. She would be sitting on the porch, listening to the world move. They would talk, sometimes about nothing, sometimes about everything. One afternoon, he brought her a simple wooden cane he carved himself. She ran her fingers along the smooth wood, her mouth trembling. "No one ever made me something before," she whispered. "You deserve more than that," he said. She turned toward him. "You do not even know me. I know who left you, and I know who stayed." Her lips parted. She reached out and touched his hand. "Thank you, Zeke." He swallowed hard. "You see more than most folks with eyes, and you hide more than most folks with scars." He looked away. "Zeke," she said softly, "you do not have to hide with me." He met her gaze. Her eyes could not see, but they saw him. That night, as he walked her up the stairs, she held his arm tighter than usual. "Are you staying?" she asked. He paused. "Do you want me to?" She smiled, that quiet, sure smile of hers. "Yes." He nodded. "Then I will." And for the first time in years, Zeke Granger did not feel like he was running. He felt like he was home. The wind carried the smell of cut hay and horses as Zeke closed the livery doors behind him. His hands were stained with saddle oil and the ache in his shoulders spoke of honest work. He crossed the dusty yard toward the boarding house where June sat beneath the porch awning, fingers moving slowly over her lap, tracing a small square of linen she'd been hemming. He stopped at the bottom step. "You ever sew for coin?" She shook her head, her hand pausing mid-stitch. "I once mended linens for a preacher's wife in Missouri, but she paid me in apples and silence." "You're quick," he said, watching the needed she'd made. "Folk might pay for that." Her mouth turned up just slightly. "You think I should start a business?" "I think you already have one. Just need folks to notice." She folded the linen carefully, setting it beside her. "And how would they do that?" Zeke frowned. "Well, we could ask around. See who needs mending." "We?" He stepped up onto the porch, leaning his weight against the post. "You reckon you'll get far asking without someone to walk you?" June lifted her chin. "You'd be my partner, then? If you'll have me." She nodded once, solemn. "All right." An hour later, they'd stopped at the milliner's shop. June sat quiet while Zeke spoke with the owner, a widow with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. "Blind, you say?" she asked, hands on her hips. Zeke nodded. "But she's fast, precise. Ask her what she can do. Then look at that hem." The woman took the swatch, held it to the light. "Well, Lord bless. That's cleaner than anything my girls managed in weeks." Zeke glanced at June. She didn't smile, but her fingers tapped once against her knee. The woman sighed. "I'll bring a basket by the boarding house tomorrow. If she can mend what's inside, I'll pay fair." June tilted her head. "What's your name?" "Mrs. Havers." "Thank you, Mrs. Havers. I'll do it right." When they stepped back onto the street, June whispered, "You didn't have to speak for me." "I didn't," Zeke said. "I just cleared the way." They walked in silence past the edge of town where fields stretched toward the hills. Somewhere, a blackbird called from the fence post. "I used to dream about hills," June said suddenly. "I was 14 the last time I saw one." The sun caught on the grass like it had gold in it. Zeke didn't speak. He just watched her face, the way it tilted toward the land like she could still see it. "You ever dream of anything?" she asked. He pushed his hat back, squinting into the distance. "I used to dream about building something that'd last. A place no one could burn down. Why did it matter so much?" He rubbed the back of his neck. "Because everything else I had went to ash." June took a breath, quiet and deep. "You don't have to tell me what happened. I know. But if you ever do." She reached out and her fingers brushed his sleeve. "I'll listen." They stood in the wheat-colored light until the sun dipped low. June's hand stayed near his arm, not quite holding, not quite letting go. Back at the boarding house, she climbed the stairs slower than usual. Zeke followed behind, close enough to catch her if she stumbled, far enough she wouldn't feel watched. At the top, she turned. "Will you be here in the morning?" "I will." "Good," she said, and the word held more weight than he expected. He watched her door close. Then he sat on the porch long after the lamps were lit, listening to the boards creak and the prairie wind hum through the eaves. He didn't dream that night, but when he woke, he remembered the sound of her voice saying good. And for the first time in years, it didn't feel like a borrowed word. It felt like something waiting to be built. By the middle of July, the rhythm of days in Larkspur Flats had settled around Zeke and June like a fitted glove. Word of her mending had spread faster than he expected by midweek. There were 2 more baskets on the porch, both filled with torn sleeves, frayed collars, and the kind of careful neglect that came from hard lives and little time. June worked by touch and thread count, her hands sure even when the daylight faded. Zeke made sure she had what she needed: needles, good linen, a sharp pair of shears he traded a pocket knife for at the general store. That afternoon, clouds rolled low over the hills, dark and thick with the promise of rain. Zeke had just finished resacking the woodpile behind the boarding house when he heard her on the porch, humming under her breath. The tune was nothing he recognized, but it held the same quiet steadiness she carried in everything she did. He climbed the steps, wiping his hands on a rag. "You always hum when a storm's coming?" She stopped, as if just realizing she'd been doing it. "Only when I can feel it in my ribs." "How's that?" "Wind changes. Pressure settles different in my chest. I used to tell my cousin when the rains were coming. She thought I had second sight." He sat down beside her, boots thunking against the boards. "Did you like her?" "She was loud and kind, which was just what I needed back then. Died of fever when we were 16. Zeke pressed his palms together. "You miss her." "I miss the way she laughed. I miss the way she didn't pity me." He looked over. The sky had begun to bruise, purple edging the horizon. "That what most people do. Pity? Often enough. Or they talk slow, like blindness means I've gone simple. You ever think about leaving here?" She turned her head toward the wind. "Where would I go?" He didn't answer right away. "I've been thinking about building something. Not just settling. A real place." "Where?" "Near the creek bend west of town. Saw apple trees back there. Ground soft. Could turn it into something." She reached out and he set his hand in hers without hesitation. Her fingers traced the lines of his palm. "What would you build there?" "Cabin. Barn. Fence pasture. Maybe a place out front with shade where someone could sit and hum if they wanted." Her thumb paused over the scar near his thumb joint. "What would this place be for?" He turned his face toward the storm. "For staying. For coming home to." She let go of his hand slowly. "You telling me or asking me?" He turned to her. "I'm asking." She didn't answer right away. The first drops of rain began to fall, soft and even across the porch roof. "I don't know how to live in a place that doesn't vanish," she said finally. "But I'd like to try." Zeke stood and offered his arm. "Come inside. I'll make coffee." She rose, her hand finding his elbow. "Do you know how?" He grinned, leading her toward the door. "I've boiled worse things." The rain came harder as they stepped inside, casting a gray hush over the wooden floors and worn cushions of the parlor. He lit the stove in the back kitchen and filled the tin pot. June leaned against the counter, her hands resting lightly on the edge. "Did you ever think you'd end up here?" she asked. "No, I didn't think I'd end up anywhere." She leaned her head against the wall. You have a voice that sounds different when you're not lying to yourself. He poured the coffee and handed her a cup. And what does it sound like? Like you've already chosen. He sat across from her at the small table, steam rising between them. Maybe I have. She sipped carefully. Then tell me what it is you want. Zeke set his cup down and looked at her. Really looked. I want to build that place. And I want you there, choosing it with me. Her breath caught just slightly. She set her cup down and reached across the table. He took her hand warm and steady in his. You mean that? She asked. I do. She smiled, slow and sure. Then I think we can start. Outside, the rain softened to a hush. Inside, the room held warmth not from the stove, but from the shape of two people no longer waiting. The land west of Larkspur Flats had gone quiet beneath the weight of summer. Locusts buzzed low in the brush, and the creek bent through the cottonwoods like a silver thread pulled tight. Zeke stood in the half-cleared grove, the handle of his spade worn smooth beneath his palm, sweat trickling down the back of his neck. He'd been clearing deadfall since sunrise, marking out the cabin's shape with stakes and string. It wasn't much yet, just lines in dirt and a few split logs stacked under a tarp, but it was more than he'd had in years. He straightened when he heard footsteps in the grass, measured, careful, not alone. I brought lunch, came June's voice, even and unhurried. And someone to carry it. A boy no older than 15 came behind her, holding a cloth-wrapped bundle and a jug of water. His shirt was too big, his elbows too sharp. Zeke recognized him from the tannery, Mrs. Haver's nephew. He's got a strong back, June said, stepping lightly over a root. And no taste for leatherwork. The boy set the bundle down and gave a short nod. Ma'am says you pay in coin and don't ask questions. Zeke lifted the cloth. Bread, salt pork, and a wedge of dried apple pie. He looked at June. You made this. Mrs. Havers did, she said. I just traded stitches for it. The boy glanced between them, then toward the stakes in the dirt. You building a house? Zeke wiped his hands on his trousers. That's the plan. I can help afternoons. Long as there's work. Zeke nodded. You got a name? Eli. Then get yourself a hammer, Eli. The boy grinned, all teeth and sunburn, and jogged back toward town. June sat on a felled log, her hands folded neatly in her lap. You didn't ask where I'd gone. You told me once I didn't have to know everything, Zeke said, sitting next to her. I figured you'd tell me if it mattered. I like that you listen, she said. But I like more that you don't press. They ate in the shade, the creek murmuring beyond the trees. June didn't speak much, just turned her face toward the breeze and let the silence settle like a blanket between them. Zeke watched the way her hands moved when she spoke, small gestures, precise. She didn't fumble, didn't reach for pity. She carried herself with a quiet certainty that made him want to build faster, plant deeper, stay longer. You ever think about teaching? He asked after a while. Teaching what? Other folks like you. The ones who can't see but still got hands. She tilted her head. There weren't many like me back in Missouri. Folks kept them hidden. Well, you're not hidden now, he said. If someone saw you work, they'd learn something. She ran her fingers along a knot in the log. I'm not sure folks want to learn from someone they think got less. Zeke leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Then let me show them what you are. And what we're building. June didn't speak for a long time. Then she turned toward him, not quite smiling, not quite frowning. You want to do this together? I do. And not just the land. He met her gaze, steady as he'd ever been. Not just the land. She reached out and found his wrist, her fingers wrapping around it. Then let's finish the clearing. I want to walk the lines of my home. He helped her up, guiding her to the edge of the staked perimeter. She let go and moved slowly, 1 foot at a time, tracing the lines in the dirt with the tip of her cane. She didn't ask what it looked like, she asked how it felt underfoot, how it opened toward the trees, how the light shifted through the leaves. Zeke followed behind, watching her walk the shape of their future. At the far corner, she stopped. Put the front window here, she said. So the morning finds us first. It will, Zeke said. She turned to him, her expression still. I want a rocking chair on the porch. I want a garden I can tend by feel. I want a clothesline no one can walk into. I'll build all of it, he said. Every board, every nail. She touched the edge of his jaw. And if I lose my way, I'll be where you can reach, he said. Always. Her thumb grazed the edge of his cheek, and her hand lingered. Then she stepped back, cane tapping lightly. Let's start with the foundation. The rest will come. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the clearing. Zeke picked up his spade. June sat again on the log, listening to the rhythm of the digging. Each stroke into the earth felt like a vow, quiet, solid, unshakable. By the time the light faded, a shape had begun to rise, not just of a cabin, but of a life they'd chosen, one beam at a time. The cabin walls rose by mid-August, notched pine fitted tight and true, the scent of sap still clinging to the grain. Zeke's hands had blistered and healed twice over, and the muscles in his back ached with the kind of work that made a man feel whole. Eli showed up each afternoon with a determined jaw and a growing confidence with the hammer. June brought water and direction, a hand pressed to a board, a question about the slope of the roofline, a suggestion for how to place the hearth so it caught the afternoon warmth. One evening, as the sky deepened to a dusky violet, June stood beneath the open doorframe. Her cane rested against the wall, unused. She tilted her head, counting Zeke's footsteps in the packed dirt as he circled the cabin, checking the pitch of the eaves. "You're pacing," she said. "I'm measuring," Zeke answered. "Want to make sure the porch'll hold when the snows come." She stepped inside, slow and sure, her hand brushing the fresh-hewn wall. "You think of winter already?" "I think of everything," he said. "Too many years of not thinking left me nowhere." She moved closer, her fingers grazing the wooden frame of what would be their kitchen window. "Tell me about your mother." He blinked. "Why? You've told me about the land, the fire, the men you lost. But not her." He crouched near the hearthstone he'd laid earlier that morning, running his hand along the cool edge. She had a sharp voice and soft hands. Cut bread like she was carving scripture. She'd hum when she washed clothes, not because she liked it, but because it was the only time she got to be alone. "She sounds like she knew how to keep going." "She did. Right up until the fever took her." June nodded. "Mine used to braid my hair in silence. Not because she didn't want to talk. She just liked the quiet." They stood there in the half-finished house, the weight of memory between them, not heavy, just present. Zeke straightened. "I want to know the rest of you." June's brow furrowed slightly. "You already do." "No. I know what you've endured. I want to know what you want. After all this." She folded her arms. "I want an enamel basin by the back door. I want to teach Eli to read if he'll sit still long enough. I want to grow mint." He smiled, the corner of his eyes crinkling. "Mint? For tea. And headaches. And the smell of it when it rains." She paused. "And I want someone beside me who doesn't ask me to pretend the world is easy." Zeke stepped close, the rough boards creaking beneath his boots. "I never will." She reached up, fingers brushing his collarbone. "Then stay." He took her hand, brought it to his chest. "I already did." That night, they slept on a blanket laid over the floorboards, the roof above them half-shingled, stars visible through the gaps. June curled against him without hesitation, her breath even against his shoulder. "I never thought I'd belong anywhere," she whispered. "But this feels like the place I was meant to find." Zeke kissed her hair and pulled her closer. "We'll make it more than a place." By late September, the shutters were hung, the door latched smooth, and the stove gave off a steady heat. The apple trees near the creek had ripened just enough for picking, and Zeke brought a few in a sack one morning, laying them on the kitchen table June had helped him sand down. She stood beside him, slicing one open with practiced fingers. "We should have a supper," she said. "Let the town see what we built. You want all of Larkspur Flats in our kitchen? I want them to know we aren't hiding." They held the supper 2 days later. Mrs. Havers brought roasted squash, and Eli's mother sent a basket of cornbread. Folk came curious, maybe cautious, but they stayed long after the food was gone. June told stories dry and clever about sewing by lanternlight and learning to tell weather by the weight of the wind. Zeke said little, but his hands stayed at the small of her back, and his eyes followed her with quiet pride. After the guests had gone and the lamps had been turned down, June stood by the window, the night air cool on her face. Zeke wrapped his arms around her from behind. "You were right," he said. "They needed to see it. They needed to see us," she said. "Together." He kissed the place just behind her ear. "You want to marry me?" She turned in his arms, her face lifted. "Are you asking?" "I'm telling you I love you. And I want to build every season with you." June's mouth curved, not just a smile, but something steady and rooted. Then yes. They wed the next week beneath the cottonwoods, the creek whispering behind them, Eli holding the ring Zeke had hammered from a silver coin. June wore a shawl the color of ripe wheat. Zeke wore his cleanest shirt and the look of a man who finally had something to keep. They didn't exchange many words in front of the crowd. Just vows spoken low and true, hands joined with purpose. And when they stepped back into the house that night, it felt like the world had quieted just for them. Years passed and the house stood. The mint grew wild under the kitchen window. Eli came by once a week for supper, taller now, and prone to quoting scripture with a grin. June taught 2 girls from the edge of town how to stitch by feel, and Zeke added a second room to the house when the first long winter came. They aged gently, lines deepening, hair silvering, but love, like the land, only deepened. They sat most evenings on the porch, her rocking chair creaking beside his. They didn't say much. They didn't need to. When the lights softened and the air cooled, June would reach for his hand, and he'd always place it in hers, warm and steady. And in that quiet place, beneath the turning sky, they lived not just happily, but wholly, each day another stone laid in the foundation they'd built together.